Ah, oh, oh, there I am. Quiet phone. Okay. Better let people in. Okay. Hi, everyone. Everybody's still connecting to audio. So, okay. Now everyone's connected. Okay. Hi, everyone.
Hi, how are you?
I'm well. How are you guys doing?
Good as well.
Excellent. Excellent. I'll just wait another minute or two just to get yeah. Likewise, Zoe. I don't know. I haven't been the sleep has been very strange over the pandemic. Plus all the I don't know. I keep thinking about all the protest occupation stuff. It's got me all like, nah, like what am I going to do with this class? Actually, I don't know who's been following the news. Hopefully, you've all been following the news, but with the public order emergency that was declared, they could be clearing people out of the downtown core soon. I don't know. They are handing out flyers now telling people to go away. So maybe quiet phone. So maybe after reading week, we can get back to in-person stuff. That's kind of what I'm hoping happens is pretty much everybody's on the way out or is gone from the downtown area, and we can get back to normal. Even if everybody's not cleared out from the occupied areas, even if most people are gone, I think it would probably be fine to go back to in-person classes after reading week. So I guess what I'm saying is I'm going to keep an eye on the situation. And if it looks like it's a good idea to go back to the in-person stuff, then that's what we'll do following reading week. Because I think it would be nice to be able to, some of the discussions we've been having about consciousness and the mind have been very interesting and exciting, but it would be really awesome if we could have them in person, right? Plus I'd get to, interact with people. We'd all get to interact with people. That's nice. I've missed that. So yeah. So I guess for those who joined while I was blathering on about the situation, now that there are more people here, I'm going to keep an eye on the situation downtown. My hope is that we can go back to in-person classes after reading week, and reading week is coming up. Next week is reading week. So what else? Oh yeah, everybody should have their grade and feedback from their critical responses. I'd say overall, nice work. A lot of you did exactly what I expected. And that was to pick an idea or, a concept, a debate, a thought experiment, anything that you found interesting from class, either from the lectures or from the textbook, or even from somewhere else, maybe that has something to do with what we're talking about, and you critically engaged with it. You told me what you thought of it and why, and you gave me good reasons for what you think of it, for the conclusions you gave to, and that is good. Donovan, go ahead.
I just want to ask, can I'm going to stick around after this lecture. I want to ask you some things regarding like the course material, going forward. So, all right.
That would be fine after lecture wraps up.
Yeah,
we can do that.
Okay.
I will say regarding the feedback, I tried to give a lot of comments. And the comments are always, when you read comments that have been written down, you know, I don't know. I guess I always have this worry about sounding kind of mean. But all my comments are meant to be constructive, right? I'm not like you know, I'm not writing in this voice where I'm like, oh, you got this wrong. You know, I'm not trying to do that. I'm just trying to point out where there's room for improvement if something has gone wrong, and not only that, but to also tell you a little bit about, you know, how to you know, how to avoid those mistakes in future, right? Oh, go ahead. I just want to make sure I'm pronouncing your name correctly. How do you say?
Silken.
Silken. Okay.
Yeah, on that note, I just want to thank you for putting all the comments. In fact, I love that way of making you see your mistakes, because it's super helpful, especially for someone that is whose first language is not English.
Right.
So that was super helpful. So thank you so much.
Oh, good. I'm glad that you found that helpful. So that's what I'll continue to do. And yeah, I was impressed with the range of topics. A lot of you zeroed in on some similar ideas. A lot of you were interested in subjectivity. A lot of you were interested in zombies. So yeah, I mean, and those are the interesting ideas, right? So yeah, good job, everyone. And if you didn't do as well as you wanted to, remember, pay attention to the feedback, ask me questions. I'm here to help, right? So let's briefly finish off our slides on attention and timing. We were, I think really we left off on slide 24. I won't recap the entire slide, but remember we were talking about Libé's theory. Libé, remember, observed that there's a half-second delay between stimulus and that stimulus becoming conscious, right? This is his time on theory of consciousness. And again, not to spend too much time on this slide, remember that Milner and Goodale proposed that because we have these two visual systems, the dorsal and ventral stream, one is conscious and the other is not. The ventral stream is the vision for perception stream. It leads to consciousness, a conscious perception of our visual world, right? But the dorsal stream doesn't. It's vision for action. It's for catching things, returning serves, throwing balls, opening doors, picking up cups, right? Any number of things that we might think we're in control of, but that we're not. Libé kind of disagrees with Milner and Goodale. He does not think that whether something ends up becoming conscious or not depends on the system that it's implemented in, but how long the activity occurs for. And maybe Libé would say that, well, maybe activity in the ventral visual stream is just, you know, takes longer and therefore it's conscious. I'm not sure what he would say there, but again, he's also a kind of dualist, right? He believes in this mental force, this conscious mental field, the CMF. And Libé is not alone in kind of being a little different here. Penrose, maybe not really a dualist, as I was discussing last time with Ben. He's not really a dualist, but he does think that we need to rethink how we're approaching questions to do with consciousness so that we can bring in, I don't know, things like quantum theory. But Popper and Eccles, they were definitely dualists, which is really weird because Popper, you know, philosopher of science, known for falsification, the idea that science does not verify, it actually attempts to falsify its claims. And that's a big one. That is a big principle of naturalism that informs how we do science to this day. So he and Eccles also thought that there was a non-physical mind, some kind of dualism going on, and that might explain the subjective antidating, for example, that Libé proposed, right? Remember, we don't feel like there's a delay. So the brain subjectively antedates it. That's what Libé proposed. Of course, Paul and Patricia Churchland or Daniel Dennett, they would say, this is dualism. We can't have that. So let's go back to that example that we started with when we were beginning our discussion of attention and timing. Imagine that you're back in an in-person lecture. Oh, how I wish we were in in-person lectures. And someone enters the room. So you hear the door open. It seems as though you hear the door open, firstly, and secondly, you consciously turn around and look, right? You hear the sound enters consciousness, not to sound like a Cartesian materialist, but the sound enters your consciousness, and then you consciously decide to turn around and look, see who it is. Maybe it's a late student, maybe the professor's late, maybe it's somebody who's in the wrong place, right? Someone goes into a room and realizes there's a class there and says, oops, I've done that before. So William James would say that all of this is evidence for the effect theory. The idea that, the idea that, oh God, I've gotten them mixed up now. James has, remember, the causal theory and the effect theory. Here, I guess action is an effect, or rather attention, consciousness is an effect of attention, or the other way around. I still haven't finished my coffee, so I apologize for sounding so mixed up right now. What Liebe is saying, though, is that following the noise, there's lots of unconscious processing, right? Discrimination of auditory stimuli, identifying those auditory stimuli. Lots of lower level processing is actually going on. And all of that is unconscious. After about 500 milliseconds, the noise enters our consciousness, Liebe says, and then it's antedated, such that it seems to have occurred right at the time when it really happened. So that is how Liebe imagines this working. But this is all pretty tricky to interpret, right? Subjective reports of when things happen, for example, are definitely not the same kind of thing as objective measures of when things happen, right? When we do an EEG study like Liebe's, we're comparing objective events. We can measure changes in electrical potential, event-related potentials, they're called, which are detected by electrodes on the scalp. These are changes in electrical potential. So changes in the voltage. You'll see it like this if you were to graph it, you could see these curves on a graph changing. And these are time locked to stimuli. And nowadays, this is all done with computers. So it's all very accurate. So I've got a computer script, I've got a script, say, that's running this in my lab such that on my EEG screen, I can see not only what's happening with your brain waves, but I also know exactly when the stimulus was presented to you, right? And by the way, when you're doing these kinds of experiments, you never see these ERPs in real time. No, you have to go and you have to clean the data up. There's a lot of noise there. You have to go and you use statistical methods to clean your data up. And then you can see these event-related potentials time locked to stimuli. And what we're doing here, because we're dealing with subjective consciousness, is now we have to take that and compare it to someone's subjective report of when something happened. Say a report of where a dot is on a cathode ray oscilloscope, or where the hand of a clock is. So it's all very difficult to do, and it's not very straightforward. Zoe, go ahead.
Are you able to hear me?
I can, yes.
Okay, so when you're talking about the noise and them cleaning it up, that's just because when they measure the electronic responses, humans give off electronic signals. And so there's if they got an image, for instance, it would look kind of staticky. And so they have to clean it up that way. Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, there's a lot of things I'll explain. I mean, I learned about all of this in my neuroscience course when I was doing my PhD, and our instructor, Dr. Van Bentham, Kathy Van Bentham in the ACE lab, she's really awesome at EEG stuff, and we all took turns doing an EEG study in the lab. Now, these electrodes are very sensitive, and they have to be, but that means that they're susceptible to electronic signals in the environment. So the first thing you got to do is make sure that your phone is either off or on airplane mode, right? When you go in the lab. Then the person has the EEG cap on their head, they're inside of a Faraday cage, right? Which is a cage kind of where the wire is all copper, and it kind of insulates you from electromagnetic radiation. But then your own body, as you say, Zoe, is doing electrical things, right? I had the EEG on, and I was very entertained by the fact that whenever I blinked, the electrodes would pick up the electrical signals from my muscles when I was blinking or just moving my face around. You know, plus there's a computer in the room, right? So it's very noisy. So they have to take all that noise out, and there's software for doing that. So that's how we do it. And then we can get a clearer picture of what's happening. So yeah, as you say, we give off electricity, the environment has electricity. It's tough to do, but we can do it because we have very good computer programs for doing this now. Now, so what does this mean? We're talking about things that may be antedated, and it's tricky to interpret because we're dealing with comparing subjective reports to objective measures. So what's going on? Well, let's take a look at perceptual illusions. Some perceptual illusions suggest that some experiences are predictive while others are postdictive. Some are a result of what the brain expects is going to happen, and some are maybe more analogous to Liebe's subjective antedating. So maybe this is a feature in how we interpret these strange phenomena. Such illusions illustrate that the order in which we experience events excuse me, is not necessarily the order in which they happen. Oh, I have a little mistake there. Well, this might tempt us into dualism, right? There is a physical world. There is a mind-independent reality where things happen, and they happen in a certain order, right? Unless you're a Kantian or something, and right, and you know, if you're a Kantian, space and time aren't out there. No, they're in the mind. The mind, they're the forms of sensible intuition that the mind uses to, you know, make sense of the world. But let's not worry about that. You can see why this is tempting. If you do believe there's a mind-independent reality out there, then yeah, there's a physical world. Well, that's fine. Many of us agree about that. But you also might be tempted to think that there's an inner world of experience. And in this world, events might be happening in a different order than what they're happening in the external world. But that's a problematic assumption, says, you know, somebody like Daniel Dennett. Why is it problematic? Well, we can illustrate it with the phi phenomenon. So let me just minimize myself. So if lights in different positions are flashed quickly one after another, we see one light moving, not two separate lights. This is the phi phenomenon. I can't show you that because I don't have a video, but you'll just have to imagine. Let's pretend my fingers are the lights, the tips of my fingers. If the light is on here and then on here fast enough, it doesn't look like two lights blinking. It looks like one light going back and forth. Donovan, go ahead.
That sort of like analogy is pretty easy to just describe because that's literally what frame rate is.
Yeah, it's like how video is animated.
I know anyone who plays a lot of like video games is familiar with this quip that like when you're having when the program's having a lot of lag, you know, you describe it as turning into a PowerPoint presentation. And it's basically the frame rate slows down enough that not only can you see the individual frames as they move, but the sense of movement itself is lost. And so it's the same idea.
It is the same idea, exactly. So very similar. And like Zoe says, yeah, like scrolling text, like on old movies, I find you can see this. If the text is crawling, you can kind of, it can look a little choppy sometimes. Or those moving neon signs. Yeah, imagine if there was a neon sign that's, you know, part of it's on and then another part of it's on. If it were going fast enough, maybe it would appear to be moving. So like I said, I don't have a single example of the phi phenomenon, but I'm going to see if I can open this. Control click. I'm sharing my screen, so I hope this isn't too choppy. But if we go here, we can see this phi circle, and you'll have seen something like this before, I'm sure. So hopefully the video isn't too choppy. Hopefully my frame rate doesn't drop as I'm sharing my screen. There we go. So if everyone can see that. This is the phi phenomenon. It looks like a white dot going around, doesn't it? The illusion of motion. Yeah, hopefully you can all see this. If not, you can follow the link on your own. But that was the phi phenomenon. Here, I'll just replay it. It's kind of hypnotic. It's funny, everybody can see my YouTube, all the stuff I've been watching. How to cook the perfect steak. You have to watch that. Right. So that's the phi phenomenon. Now, let's just get back to this. So that's the phi phenomenon. What you saw there is an illusion of continuous motion around the circle. But really, it's just one of the blue dots blinking off one at a time. Fast enough. Whoa, what's happening there? Oh, looks like I just found out. Oh, that's cool. I just found someone else doing what I'm doing, online lectures. Wicked. Anyway, so phi phenomenon. In the color phi phenomenon, it's similar to that, but we only have two lights and they're different colors. And people will report that the light moved and changed color. So let's say we have green and red. So green, red, green, red, green, red. If this goes fast enough, people will report that rather than blinking, green, red, that the light will move, green, red, and change color as it's moving. Whoa. It looks like the light changes from green over here to red over here before it even flashes red over here. What's going on there, right? What's going on? I wonder as well. Well, we could reproduce it, but we might have to use grayscale or perhaps a color that one can still perceive, right? So people report that the light moves. It doesn't look like lights blinking on and off. It looks like a light moving back and forth, and it's changing color before, you know, it gets over here. So it starts green, changes to red, now it's red, goes back, changes to green, now it's green, like that. That's the color phi phenomenon. What's going on there? There's also this cutaneous rabbit illusion, which I'm not really going to talk about. It has something to do with making certain numbers of taps at different spots, and it feels like it's just one continuous thing, like a little rabbit hopping on your skin. I can't seem to get it to work. I think it's like tickling yourself. I don't think I can do it on my own arm. I'd have to do it on, you know, tap someone else's arm. But anyway, so, you know, just talking about the color phi, how does the brain know which color a flashing light will turn to if there's this half-second delay, right? Maybe one consciously, this is what Dennett says, and Dennett explains this so cleverly. Maybe you consciously experience the stationary red light, and then this experience gets wiped out and replaced when the green light flashes. And then it's replaced with an experience of the light changing to green. So Dennett calls this an Orwellian revision. And this is after George Orwell's novel, 1984, where we have, you know, Winston Smith, right? And he works for, doesn't he work for the Ministry of Truth or something? And what the Ministry of Truth is doing.
The Ministry of Plenty.
Sorry?
He's in mini plenty. the Ministry of Plenty, the one that
Ministry
like has to revise all of the all of the statistics.
Yeah, he's revising history. He's changing all the news stories, right?
He goes to the Ministry of Truth.
I see. Okay, it's been a while since I read it, but you see the idea, right? Donovan, go ahead.
So the idea of like the brain going back and like sort of revising the information of like what just happened, right? I if that's like what's going on, I feel like it might be kind of like on a very, very small scale, it might be kind of similar to how like let's say like you're going about your life and you have an interaction with someone where they do something that like makes you like angry, like it's like they just do something that like really inconveniences you or something like that, but then and like you're mad about it, but then you learn later that they had a good reason to do that, and like that context changes your perception of what happened.
Yeah,
And so if the brain is capable of doing that on a large scale, then I like you could reason that it would be able to do so much more efficiently on a small scale.
Yeah, only I wouldn't say one is large and one is small scale. I would say one is more, actually your example is maybe more cognitive, because you learned a new fact about something, about the person that you were thinking of, right, who was behaving the way they were behaving. So you learn something new about them and then you reevaluate, right? So that's cognitive, where this is perceptual, which tends to be, it's not something that you can think about. It just kind of happens, right? But yeah, you're kind of
there's a similarity in the process.
There is a similarity. So one option is you've got an experience of a stationary red light, and then an experience of a stationary green light. When the green light flashes and the red light turns off. And then that experience is in turn replaced with an experience of the light moving and changing to green. That's the Orwellian revision. You can imagine you've got a little Winston Smith in your brain making these revisions very quickly, right? That's one option. Or maybe we have a Stalinist revision, right? Joseph Stalin, the man of steel, he called himself, a brutal autocrat of the Soviet Union, who would not hesitate to have his enemies sent to the gulag or just straight up killed. Oh, Stalin was a brutal man. His son attempted to take his own life by shooting himself in the face with a pistol, and he failed. And when Stalin heard about this, he said something like that my idiot son can't even kill himself properly. Awful guy. So anyway, maybe you never experienced the stationary red light. Maybe your entire experience is just delayed until the relevant information was available. So you don't really have an experience getting overwritten of a red light and a green light, and then maybe there is no experience getting rewritten. Maybe nothing happens until all of the information is available and your perceptual systems put that together. Papa Stalin. Yeah. I mean, the guy, before he was in politics, he was a criminal. He was like a bank robber. I mean, geez, this guy, people are like, oh, Hitler was the evil guy of the 20th century. Well, yeah, he was, but so was Stalin. I mean, they were both way evil. But
and Stalin's like foray into like the Communist Party in Russia was because he was useful to them as a way of like acquiring things less than legally. Yeah.
Imagine like he was kind of useful to them. It was instrumental. And then he kind of took over, and it was kind of like how, and I'm not saying that Trump is as savvy or clever as Stalin was, but Donald Trump was useful to the Republican Party, and now I think they've kind of lost control of that monster. Same with Stalin back in the day. And, of course, Lenin died. A lot of the other leaders were forced out of the party, assassinated. Anyway, so this is the Stalinist revision. one's experience is delayed until the relevant information is available. And this is called the Stalinist revision because Stalin would famously have these show trials where, you know, evidence was just made up and presented in order to get rid of political agitators, you know. Oh, Mao. Yeah, we can't forget about Mao and the Great Leap Forward. You know, you got to crack a few eggs to make an omelet, Mao might say. Well, not really. I don't know if he knew that idiom, but that captures it. What these guys thought, you know, you got to get your hands dirty. But millions of people died and suffered under these sort of forced modernization programs. It happened in the Ukraine. It happened in communist China. Yeah, not good. So yeah, lots of nasty dictatory folks. Nowadays we got Putin being all Putin-y. More things change, the more they stay the same, huh? All right, so what does Dennett think? I mean, Dennett cleverly presents these two, you know, sort of scenarios. There's maybe an Orwellian scenario or a Stalinist scenario, but Dennett actually doesn't think there's any way of telling the difference between the two, right? Like he kind of lays this out. He does this in Consciousness Explained. He lays it out and says, okay, so look, based on what we know about how our perceptual systems work, it could happen this way or this way, but we can't really tell which one it is, you know? So Dennett calls it a difference that makes no difference, right? If you think one or the other must be true, then, you know, if there's a particular way that things enter consciousness, well, that's Cartesian materialism, right? That's what Dennett would say. And you need to dispel your Cartesian intuitions about consciousness. So the problem is not about timing neural events. It's not about our subjective judgments. It's a problem with the intuitions we have about consciousness, actually. We're not thinking about it in the right way, Dennett would say. We're still stuck in this way of thinking that there's a special time and place in the brain where it all comes together. And we saw this when we were talking about the Cartesian theater. We tried to dispel the notion that there was a special place in the brain where it all came together. And with this discussion, what we've tried to do is dispel the notion that there is a time at which things become conscious. Cool stuff. And that's it for these slides. So let's close these. Get this out of the way here. Zoe, go ahead.
So as far as time being, the brain is decentralized. There's no spot in the brain where everything comes together. But because there are also these different iterations of the consciousness, there is no period where there is no time period where consciousness comes together. And so what does that mean for for instance, we have memory and stuff like that, and there are defined areas of the brain that are set for short-term or long-term memory, or information recall, or even there's a temporal part of the brain that keeps track of time. What would that mean for those parts of the brain?
Well, I mean, those parts of the brain could still be working kind of like in a linear kind of way. There isn't even Broca's area is a perfect example, which literally that's what it does, is it linearizes things, right? Outputs, speech, right? It makes sure you get your words in the right order. If you're counting.
Oh yeah, you
right?
did mention that. So
yeah.
That would be kind of interesting, where you could use all the parts individually, but they kind of have a set order of doing things in.
Yeah, it's all just really consciousness, not necessarily the physical events in the brain. It's like if you think about it, when does something enter my consciousness? When does this thing over here that I'm looking at enter my consciousness? Well, I was kind of peripherally aware of it before I looked at it. I know that it's over there even when I'm not in this room. When is it in my consciousness? Do I have to be fully conscious of something or partially conscious?
Yeah, exactly.
You know, like it's a silly question. And Dennett, especially because he thinks that it's all the parallel processes in the brain, all multiple drafts, right? Probing each other, revising, editing. It's kind of like you're always conscious to some degree of something, but to think of like hard and fast places and times when it happens is a mistake, right? That's what
gotcha.
yeah. So that's what Dennett would say. Okay, so let's see. How are we doing for time? 12:11. Okay. The Grand Illusion. This is a fun one. If my slides will work. Come on now. Oh, okay. So let's think about our visual experience. Right now, I'm looking at my computer screen. Behind it, I have some things on my desk. I can see what's behind me on my screen here. I have some musical instruments and a lamp. I can look around, and it seems like I have this detailed visual experience, a sort of snapshot of the world that's filled in with lots of detail. But is it really like that? Or is that just how it seems? I mean, think about it. You're looking around, and it's like, oh yeah, look at all this rich detail that's available to me. It's like a photograph. If I wanted to, I could freeze it and look around and find all this detail. But that's not how it is. At least not according to Alvanoe. Alvanoe does not think that the snapshot conception of perception is accurate. He calls this a grand illusion. This idea is that what we see is not really a detailed picture of the world itself. It's an internal model, right? A mental representation, kind of like our brains are our own virtual reality machines, right? And this is a view that I'm quite comfortable with. I'll be honest before I get into the nitty-gritty details that I do not. I think that Noe's theory is weird, and I don't like. I hope I'm doing justice to it when I present it to you, but it is a strange theory. So, just saying. But the idea that I'm very comfortable with is that what I'm seeing seems detailed. I'm not seeing the world itself. It's a mental representation of the world, right? That my brain is generating. That's what he calls the grand illusion. All of this is an illusion. It's not the world itself. It's kind of indirect realism, you know? A related idea is called the new skepticism. What is the new skepticism? Well, Noe describes it like this. The fact that it seems to us as if the brain builds up an internal model shows that we are even more profoundly deluded about the nature of our own experience, you know, than we thought. So this new skepticism is skepticism of the grand illusion, that, you know, that skepticism of the claim that the brain builds up a detailed internal model of the world. Noe doesn't think it works like that. So, but what he's saying is that our visual experience may be an illusion. So if we're talking about illusions, we got to actually look at some illusions. Let's do that now. Can you see the cube? Everybody can see the cube, right? Yeah.
Yep, real cube-like.
It's cube-like. Look at that. Look at this cube right here. There's a square, another square, all these squares. Nice cube. But of course, there is no cube, right? And you can do this yourself. Like, look at this cubiness right here. You know, if you look at, get rid of myself, where my mouse is pointing, these two corners of the cube, if you cover those, the black bits, with your hand, I'm doing it right now. I know you can't see what I'm doing with my hand, but if I cover that, the white lines to the other corners disappear. So you can try that yourself. So there's no cube. So what's going on? Is your brain filling in these lines to create this image of a cube within this empty space? Oh, you still see them. Oh, interesting. Your brain is really, yeah, phantom cube. Yeah, your brain is really persistent, I guess. So, okay, so, or how about even the fact that this is just two-dimensional and it looks three-dimensional because of perspective? That's an illusion too. right? Look at how illusory this cube is. Amazing. So what's going on? Is your brain filling in the image? Right? Yeah, I'm on. If you cover the black parts and you still see it, is your brain putting the lines there? Right? What's your brain doing? Wow, it's weird. It's like it's creating some kind of illusion, right? Or how about the cafe wall illusion? This is actually identified by a psychologist, Richard Gregory. He's the free won't guy. You know, he says of free will that we do not have free will, but we do have free won't. Yeah, cafe wall. Yeah, visual illusions are really neat. I agree, Zoe. But this one, you got to check this one out. There's a cafe in Bristol that has this wall with this illusion that I guess Richard Gregory would frequent, and so he calls this the cafe wall illusion. And you can check this. These gray lines, see, there are black squares and whitish gray squares. I guess they're supposed to be white. And then there's gray lines running horizontal, right? Now, those lines are actually parallel. Now, if you stand back and look at it, it does not look that way. It looks like the lines are all going off, all askew, but they're actually parallel. The gray lines are parallel, and you can check this if you want. You can grab yourself a straight edge. I'm using the edge of my coaster, and you can actually hold that up to your computer screen or your phone or whatever you're on. And you can check that those gray lines are in fact straight. I'm checking it right now. And even as I'm checking, holding my straight edge up, making sure that the lines are straight, they still look crooked. Wow. So cool. Visual illusions are so cool. I love them. There are lots of other illusions. Okay, so everybody knows the Mueller liar illusion, right? I don't have a picture of that, but has anybody heard of the Mueller liar illusion? It's perhaps the most famous visual illusion. No? Okay. It's where you have two lines, and you have two lines. I wish I had a whiteboard. I could just draw one. I don't have a whiteboard. Yeah, you've probably seen it. You have two lines of equal length. One of them has like a little arrow on the end, like two little arrows, and the other has two inverted arrows. And one line looks longer than the other, even though they're the same length, right? Yeah, okay, so you have seen it. Yeah, that's a very common one. Yeah, that's right. Because the Greeks knew about perspective, right? So the Greeks knew, Drew has seen it. Yeah. And yeah, the Greeks, this is kind of related. The Greeks knew about perspective. So they kind of compensated. Likewise with Raphael or Michelangelo? I forget who painted the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel, but that ceiling is flat, but it looks like it's curved, right? Mike. Okay, it was Michelangelo. Gotcha. Donovan, go ahead.
I remember last semester for one of my classes, the prof was talking about they've done like these kinds of tests on groups of people that are very like disconnected from like the rest of the world. They usually live in like isolated communities like Africa and other places. And I was reminded of this specifically by like the arrow test on like the two straight lines, because that's one of the ones they did. And they found that some of these groups are much better than the average person at telling that they are in fact the same like length.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
If I recall correctly, I think like the theory that came out of this was that because we live in a world that is so dominated by like angular shapes and straight edges, that not only that, but also like seeing the like images projected on flat screens, that our brains are just like wired to make assumptions based off of external information more.
Yeah. I've heard of that research as well. It comes down to the fact that like in a lot of developed countries, we just live in a world with lots of angles, right? And lots of corners and lots of lines. But if you're living in maybe like a hunter-gatherer society, you know, things are not so perpendicular all the time, or so your brain is kind of tuned to the world that you're in, the environment that you're in. And like you said,
one thought that came out of this that I thought that was really interesting is if you look at like older art that exists from like, you know, like ancient civilizations, but even like going up, like approaching like the medieval period, where they have like these really intricate, like repeating patterns just everywhere. It's entirely possible that the people who were making those had like their sort of sense of like how things were placed relative to each other were just like different enough that they might have made making those things easier for them.
Yeah.
Because their brains weren't trying to like include all of this sort of tangential information to like alter the image.
Yeah. It's true. Like, I think yeah, it's interesting to speculate on how art differs from time to time and between culture to culture. Like, as you say, I'm always kind of blown away by, you know, we have so much ancient art that's just two-dimensional. Even medieval art can be like this too, because, you know, after the Greeks and Romans, after civilization fell, you know, we didn't get back to that until the Renaissance, right? That's why, you know, like if you look at like the Bayeux Tapestry, which is like a two-dimensional thing where the people don't look real at all, and then just a few hundred years later, you get the Renaissance, where you get this amazing anatomical detail.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Well,
and then Islamic art is also pretty crazy because it's all patterns, you know.
Yeah. One of the most impressive things I've ever seen in my life was a few years ago. I was on a family vacation to Ireland, and I got to see parts of the Book of Kells in person, and the manuscripts, like the like pen work on those, like those like tiny patterns that are just like, I do not understand how people manage to do that, especially on a medium where they could not undo if they made a mistake.
Oh, I know. It's amazing. It's absolutely amazing, the things that people have done. And we think of people from the past like, it was the past, you know, they were dumb. Like, but no, people have done some amazing things with very simple tools. It's fascinating. So, I mean, discussions of art aside and visual illusions, what they show us, if nothing else, is that the way things appear don't always match the way things are. Oh, one more illusion, because everyone can go and have this illusion whenever they want, as long as it's nighttime and the moon is out. It's called the moon illusion. You may have noticed this. You go outside, look up, you know, it's better to do it when there's a full moon. So wait until there's a full moon. Look up when the moon is going to rise. And then you go outside and you look at the moon when it's near the horizon, and it looks enormous. And then we'll go outside again when the moon is higher in the sky, and it looks smaller. It looks like the angular size of the moon has changed. The angular size is the size it appears in the sky. That's angular size. It looks like the moon's angular size decreases when it rises. Oh, is it really a full moon tonight? Oh, that's so weird. It looks a little cloudy, but I mean, if it clears out, if the clouds go away, you could try this. You'll see that the moon appears larger when it's close to the horizon than it does when it's high in the sky. But the moon is actually pretty much the same angular size. The moon is not any closer or anything like that when it's at the horizon, you know. And you can, again, check this with a straight edge. You can take something as simple as a ruler. And what you do is you hold the ruler in front of you like this, up to the moon. I'm using my vape, but, you know, pretend it's a ruler. And you hold it up to the moon, and you can actually measure the angular size of it. And you can do that when it's at horizon and overhead, and you will find that it is the same angular size. That's the moon illusion, and that's my favorite illusion because it's just out there in nature, and, you know, we don't know why it happens, but it's interesting. So go and try the moon illusion. I love the moon illusion. So, yeah. things don't always aren't always as they appear is the lesson. And they cause us to ask whether we are mistaken about what we see. Likewise do phenomena like change blindness and inattentional blindness. But illusions, change blindness, inattentional blindness, they should also make us ask whether we might be mistaken about the nature of seeing itself, not about what we're seeing, but the nature of seeing itself. So here we go. Come on, slides, so slow. Let's do let's get out of here for a sec. I don't have this linked in the slides, but I'm still sharing my screen. So if I go back to YouTube, we're going to do the monkey business illusion. All right, now there's a black team and a white team. See the ladies here is they're passing a basketball. Now you have to. Here we go. All right, I'll pause it there. Who saw the gorilla? Drew?
I've seen this one a few times before.
Yeah.
I've also seen they've come up with an updated one as well that like changes it up, and I didn't get it on the first time for that one.
Yeah. So who didn't see the gorilla? Oh, Sarah, you didn't see the gorilla. Fascinating. So that's called inattentional blindness. You're basically what's happening is that you're focused on counting those passes. There's no gorilla, only the suit. Yeah. So when you're focused on counting the passes, you completely miss the gorilla because you are focused on doing something else. Your attention is directed on doing that. Donovan, go ahead.
I'm sorry, but this illusion has nothing on the power of ADHD. So
Oh.
I like completely like fucking spaced out on the like passing, and I was like, oh, that's weird.
Yeah. So okay, one other question. What else changed? Some of you will have seen this before, so you'll know the gorilla has changed. But did anyone notice what else changed? Drew, go ahead.
This is actually like a different one from the first time that I saw. Like they were playing in like a gym or something, but this one I noticed the curtain right away. Yeah. I noticed that it was red at the beginning and orange when the gorilla went through.
Very good. Very good. Yeah. Some of you may have seen this before and noticed that, oh yeah, that's the gorilla. But and that's what I kind of didn't notice the first time I saw this one. I'm like, oh, I know this one. There's the gorilla. And while I was looking at the gorilla, that's when the curtains changed. And I was like, oh, whoa, they changed it up, you know? Yes, we can watch it again. Yes, absolutely. And that this time, keep your eyes out for the gorilla. Let's go back to the beginning here. This time, don't count the passes. Watch the gorilla, watch the curtain. So if you didn't see it the first time, you must have seen it this time. Right? Right? It's because of inattentional blindness. Yeah. But pretty crazy, right? But yeah, like if you spaced out, forgot to count the passes, then you'd be like, oh, there's a gorilla there all of a sudden, right? So Donovan, go ahead.
Well, I know in my case, like when I struggle playing video games where you have like there's a lot of stuff going on the screen at like any given time, and you're supposed to pay attention to like specific things at specific times, because my attention will basically bounce around to like everything at seemingly at random. So if I'm told to focus on something and something else like pops onto the screen, there is a good chance I will just like be completely distracted by that, regardless of what I was doing. Like I have to really, really be focusing on something for that not to happen.
Yeah. And everybody's brains work a bit differently, right? Like I think that the original Monkey Business Illusion authors found that about 25% of their participants would fail to see the gorilla. So that's not a lot, but it is still a sizable, significant chunk of people, right? And there is some research on, I suppose, why this works on some populations and not others. I suspect that if you were to compare maybe some ADHD brains, some autistic brains, you might see some differences in that number compared to neurotypical brains, but who knows? Let's see. Yeah, that's how they get, because that's the, you're counting the white passes, so you're not really paying close attention to the black team. And of course, the person in the gorilla suit is also black. So you can miss it. It's very easy to miss it because your attention is taken up by something else. Like you said, when we watched it the second time, and I told you, keep an eye out for the gorilla. If you didn't see it before, you'd see it this time, right? Because of attention. So let's go back to thinking about our visual experience. Blackmore thinks that our experience leads many people to imagine this, that, quote, when we look at the following, when we look around the world, unconscious processes in the brain build up a more and more detailed representation of what is out there. Each glance provides a bit more information to add to the picture. This rich mental representation is what we consciously see at any time. As long as we are looking around, there is a continuous stream of such pictures. This is our conscious visual experience. Now, that's certainly the way it might seem, but we have to ask whether this is actually what's going on, right? Is it really the way it seems, or is visual experience an illusion, right? There are a couple threads we can unravel here. One is that there is a stream or snapshot, a rich one, of conscious visual impressions that we've got to explain. Like I said at the beginning of the lecture, right? The visual experience is like a picture or a video, and it's full of detail, and I could zoom in on any one little detail. And moreover, the more I look around, the more detail I'm adding, right? It's like William James's idea of the stream of consciousness. William James coined this term, stream of consciousness. It doesn't just mean, like stream of consciousness. Some people do stream of consciousness writing. They write just whatever comes to their mind, or music. When I'm playing music, which has been rare occurrence these days, but when I'm playing, I'm sitting there playing, I'm just playing. A lot of times I'm just improvising whatever comes to mind. So that's stream of consciousness. A stream of visual consciousness is the stream of visual consciousness. It's all of this that I'm seeing right now as I look around the room. Or like Damasio's idea of the movie in the brain. Cartesian materialism. Now that's okay. You get the idea, right? We're not advocating Cartesian materialism. In fact, Damasio's book that I'm citing right here is called Descartes' Error. It's not about dualism. It's about reason versus emotion. But, movie in the brain, Cartesian materialism. Or Crick, Francis Crick, the vivid picture of the world we see in front of our eyes. I haven't mentioned this before. Is that what that's called? Joycian? Joy? like ocean, but with joy?
Like a Joycean.
Joyce. Oh, Joyce. Oh, sorry. Joyce. Okay, understand. I haven't read it, but stream of consciousness media, I mean, I guess I haven't read any writing, but Monty Python's Flying Circus. That was a sketch comedy show, and it's very stream of consciousness. Sketches flow into one another in a very absurd, random way. It's not like Saturday Night Live, where a sketch has a definite beginning and end, and it's about a particular thing. Monty Python was stream of consciousness. Very, very weird. I like it. What else? Stream of consciousness lyrics and music are really cool. Some of the bands that I like to listen to, their lyrics are not really like narrative. They don't tell stories. They're just very stream of consciousness. Drew, go ahead.
There's a very cool album by a very cool band that is meant to be played on an infinite loop. It's King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard. Very complicated band name. They make great stuff. But this record, it starts at one point and then the first song flows into the next, and then into the next and the next. It's called Nonagon Infinity. And so it's 9 songs that each flow into one another, and then it loops back around at the end of the first song at the end of the last song into the first. So
that sounds cool.
Stream of consciousness stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to check that out. I'm thinking of all of their albums are quite like this, but especially Colors. There's a band called Between the Buried and Me, a progressive metal band, and those albums are essentially conceived of as one long song, right? Colors 1 and Colors 2. If you like some
Floyd albums,
what's that?
Pink Floyd has some albums like that. Like
yeah,
the first few tracks on which you were here.
Yeah, Dark Side of the Moon also.
Yeah.
Any kind of progressive music, they tend to do cool shit like that, right? So yeah, it's good. But that's good. Those are examples of stream of consciousness. Things just keep flowing. And that's what our visual experience seems like. But we already know it can't be like that. We've already learned how when we blink or when we saccade, our visual channel is overwhelmed with information from when we do that. So nothing makes it into our conscious visual experience. Yet it doesn't seem like our experience blinks on and off when we look around the world, right? So, all of this is kind of like the Cartesian theater, which, Dennett's going to have a problem. Crick also, I haven't mentioned this yet, but I feel it's worth a mention. When we deal with thinkers who have controversial views, right? I'm kind of dealing with this in my other class where I'm teaching philosophy of technology. And we have to talk about thinkers like Heidegger, right? Heidegger, by the way, the reason he's controversial is because he was a Nazi, like literally, like a member of the Nazi party. So, there's that. And Heidegger's really, I mean, if he were around today, I would probably hate the guy. He would be kind of like a Jordan Peterson type of guy. I probably would just be like, fucking Heidegger, But Heidegger's weird because, he's a Nazi, but all of his most famous students were Jewish. His mentor, Edmund Husserl, was Jewish. So I don't know what to do with Heidegger, but people need to know, like, hey, we're not just going to go, oh, Heidegger's philosophy is awesome. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But you need to know he was a Nazi, right? Crick, okay. Crick won the Nobel Prize along with Watson, Nobel Prize in physiology or medicine, because they co-discovered the structure of DNA, right? This is that Crick, Francis Crick, who co-discovered, the double helix, the DNA. And after that, he turned toward consciousness and the mind. Very important figure. One of the only thinkers about the mind, in addition to Roger Penrose, who has a Nobel Prize. But here's the thing. Crick is also like, or was pretty vehemently racist. So yeah, I don't know. I haven't mentioned that up till now, but I feel like I should. It's something you should know. He held some pretty nasty views about people of color. So yeah, you got to be careful. You know, when you're thinking about, you always got to keep this stuff in mind when you're teaching and learning. You know, remember that a lot of these people that we sometimes hold up as brilliant are just humans and are fallible and sometimes, you know, not good people, right? Just something to keep in mind as we're learning. William James, you know, William James just seems like such a cool dude, though. Like, family man, not a Nazi, not a racist. You know, William James, he's probably cool. So, you know, that's one idea. The other is that the world is represented in our minds, and this is not a new idea, right? Even Leonardo da Vinci described the eye as a camera. Well, I've got this wrong. It's not camera lucida, camera obscura. Anybody ever make a camera obscura when you were young? Sometimes you do this in school. Drew? So Drew made one. I can't hear.
Did make one.
Okay.
Oh, was I supposed to elaborate? Or?
Oh no, you can if you want. But
no, it was just like a cardboard box with a hole in it, and
yeah,
we got to see the photo in a dark room. It's pretty cool. But,
yeah, it's like a pinhole camera, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and Leonardo, you know, people knew about this for a while. In ancient Rome, and then later in the Islamic world, they would set up these camera obscuras. And you know, so some of these are room sized so that somebody could stand outside of it, and their light is going through the little hole and projecting an image on the wall, and someone draws it, right? So go ahead, Drew.
Isn't it also like another way to watch like solar eclipses? I think I read about that because it's indirect light, but it still projects the image.
That's right.
And, like, you can still see the halo.
That's
but you're
right.
Not looking at it. Yeah.
Yeah, you can use a camera obscura to watch an eclipse, and it's much safer because you're not, as you say, you're not looking at the sun, right? So Leonardo da Vinci, you know, he knew about camera obscuras, and you know, he said, you know, the eye is like a camera obscura made by nature. It is. The eye is a pinhole camera. Your pupil is the pinhole. The retina is the screen on which the image is projected. Of course, because of optics, the image on your retina is actually upside down. Your brain has to flip it back right side up again. So if you were to, you know, do what Descartes did and like look at eyes and shine light through them, the images on the other side would all be upside down. If I had a spoon, I could show you why. But you know how when you look at the spoon, if you look at your reflection in a spoon, it'll be upside down or right side up, depending on whether you're looking at the convex side or the concave side. For a similar reason, the image is flipped when it goes through our pupils and it's upside down on the retina, but the brain puts it right side up again. I don't get the Zoolander thing. It's been so long.
So his like epiphany that he wants to be a male model is that he was eating food and he looked at himself in a spoon and he saw that he was really, really ridiculously good looking. And that's the actual line. And then later on in his like adult apartment, he's got a giant spoon on the wall. And it's really funny because he looks into the spoon all existential and he's just flipped.
That's amazing. I'll have to rewatch it. It's been so long. It's been so long. I remember the gas fight, or the, you know, that's pretty much all I remember. The gasoline scene. But yeah, so Kepler, Johannes Kepler, a scientist, he wanted to understand the optics of the eye. You know, why is the image flipped like this? And he did a lot of work on optics. but he couldn't explain how the image is made to appear before the soul. How is it mentally represented? He couldn't account for that. He could explain everything, everything about the physics of light. You have an image. Right now I'm looking at my lava lamp over here. Image comes in, hits the eye. It's actually flipped around when it hits the retina, and then it must go to my brain and be flipped right side up again. But Kepler didn't know how. Descartes thought, well, probably the images are sent to the pineal gland, because that's where the soul is connected to the body, obviously. So the images go to the pineal gland, and then they are made available to the soul. That's what Descartes said. Of course, how that worked, we don't really get an explanation. But Descartes dualism, it's all in the pineal gland. So these ideas seem to be true. And spelling mistake. They certainly accord with our experiences, but they pose problems when it comes to thinking about consciousness. If we accept the idea of a stream of visual consciousness or a snapshot of reality, maybe then we could find the neural correlates of these experiences, right? But what if the stream is an illusion, or the snapshot or the mental theater or whatever you want to call it is an illusion? What if there is no stream or photo or screen where this all happens, right? That's what we have to think about next. We have to think about the possibility that, really, this is an illusion. It's all an illusion. Let's see. It's 12:49. So before we get to this next bit, I think, why don't we just wrap it up? Because that way we'll save time. Try to, come on, minimize. There we go. Oh yeah, we'll have lots of slides for next time, and we'll finish those off on Friday when we talk about the grand illusion. Ben, go ahead.
So I don't know, for some reason I thought the reading response was due like next week, then I thought it was due this week. It is, I saw that it was due this week. It's due this week, right? On Friday?
Yeah, it's due this week on Friday. Yeah. And like I said, now you should all have your feedback. So, read the feedback, digest the feedback. But if you have questions, if you're still not sure about anything, ask me, right? So, yeah. I guess that's it. I'll wrap it up there, and we'll pick it up again Friday. And as I said earlier, I'm going to keep an eye on the news, keep an eye on what's happening downtown. I live downtown. I know perhaps some of you live around here or have to travel through the downtown area or one of these protest camps, whatever they're called. But I want things to be safe for all of us. So we'll keep an eye on the news and maybe go back to in person after reading week. Okay. So that's all for today. I'll see you all next time. And I think someone had a question. They wanted to stick around for some discussion.
Yeah, that was me.
Okay, so I'll stick around here. I'm just gonna cease recording.
Yeah.
So that okay, so that's it for now. Yes,